to the Gilmore Car Museum in Hickory Corners, Michigan. I'm Joyce Irvin, inviting you to come along and experience the first annual Volvos at the Gilmore Car Show. Two strangers met on the internet, one buying parts from the other. It turns out that they both had a Cypress Green Volvo 1800 ES, just a few numbers apart off the assembly line. They became friends, they talked, they worked together, and they created this car show that you will now experience along with us. It's a beautiful venue, world-renowned for its cars in the museum. And we will show you the cars that came today for the Volvo Car Show, share stories with you, meet the people behind the Volvos. Come along with us as we experience Volvos at the Gilmore. Okay, well, welcome to the Volvo Car Show.
Well, thank you.
Glad to have you. How far did you come for today's show?
About 150 miles.
Did you drive your car?
We did.
Okay, and what is your Volvo that you brought today?
It's a 1969 P1800S.
Okay.
S meaning it was built in Sweden. What else can I say? I've only had the car since November with a recent acquisition.
Okay, where did you acquire it?
I bought it from a gentleman in Massachusetts, and my son and I went there to pick it up. We brought it home on a trailer. I didn't drive it from Massachusetts.
Okay. Did you drive it here today?
We did.
How was it on the highway?
Marvelous. I had a little problem with the overdrive, but nothing I won't be able to cure later.
Okay. Is there anything different or unique about driving a 1969 Volvo on our modern highways?
Well, I don't take it on interstates because I prefer the back roads and so forth. That's a trait I inherited from my son, who has, believe it or not, been in every county in the United States.
Every county?
Every county, not just every state, but every county.
Okay.
And he is very familiar with all of the back roads and all the alternate routes to get somewhere. And rather than pound along interstate, which is not really scenic in my viewpoint, we like to travel the back roads. And a sports car is very much at home on winding roads with lots of turns, and that's where it's fun to drive an automobile like this, rather than a straight line for 500 miles.
Okay, so of all the Volvos, or really all the cars you could have chosen, how did you come across this one to buy?
The first one I saw was an early production. I believe they were built from 1961 to 73. About 1962, I had another sports car, and I was in a dealership having some work done to it, and I happened to spot a brand new, probably 1962 P1800. I was a bit younger at that time, of course, in 1962.
We all were.
But
and that was going to be our next car.
I thought, well, I'll get one of those sometime. So 40 plus years later, I finally bought one.
Really?
And I've been kind of a car nut most of my life. I have some other vintage cars.
Does it seem to you now as it did in 1962? Like, do you see it the same way?
Almost.
What's
one of the
different?
things I remember distinctly in 1962 was the design of the instrument panel. I like the big round tachometer and speedometer with the light blue background. That stuck in my mind all those years. And this car has that feature, of course. Later ones, they changed the design of the instrument panel some, but I rather like this more stylistic one.
Okay, and have you seen this car in those 40 plus years? Have you seen it around anywhere?
This particular car?
Well, not this one, but this model.
Oh yes, on occasion. We attend a lot of car shows. This is the beginning of our car show season, and there are at least 5 more car shows coming up, and at one show or another, I've seen on occasion P1800, yes.
Okay, so now you've got one after all those years.
Of course, it's everybody, most people know that the association with Roger Moore and the Saint and so forth.
Right.
And he used a car similar to that in that TV series. So.
Yeah, so it's okay to call you Roger Moore for
You
today,
can call
right?
me Roger Moore, yeah.
Okay.
He won't mind.
Okay, so after that long wait, what are you enjoying most about having this car now?
displaying it at shows probably like we're doing today, and driving it. It'll be just a fun car, never a daily driver, and I certainly don't intend to take it out in any salt or winter weather. May start it occasionally in the winter, but
Did you have to do much to your car when you got it in November? Is it
a
pretty
lot
much
of
ready to
things.
go? Oh,
No.
you did have to do a lot?
a lot of mechanical things mostly. Completely went through the brake system, which is a very complex split brake system, and I put new calipers on it and new rear wheel cylinders, changed some of the hydraulic tubes, the hard lines, and all of the flexible lines I replaced with a braided steel flexible lines. And there are 6 of them on this car. 8 bleeder screws. It's fun to go through the bleeding process with these cars, but once you understand the mechanics of it, it's not all that difficult. I guess the 3rd generation interest in automotive design and mechanics. My great uncle was a prominent automotive designer in the 1930s, and my father was an engineer and also very automotive oriented. So I inherited my love and passion of automobiles probably through what am I looking for? Attrition through the generations, I guess.
How did you come about getting this car?
I had been racing in SCCA classes in Waterford, Michigan for about 9 years and thought I was getting out of racing and frankly tired of it. It was a lot of work and enjoyed it, but it was just a lot of work, and ran across a vintage race car, which is something I always wanted to try. And as a result, I ran across this car being for sale on the internet.
Okay, and on the internet. And so what, can we give it a model number?
Yes, it's a Volvo 122S called an Amazon.
Okay, it is an Amazon.
It is an Amazon. Yes.
And has it been modified for racing?
Distinctly, and
Okay.
and at great length. Yes, it was built as a race car actually in the mid '70s by a gentleman, Don Bergeron, from the Chicago area, and he campaigned the car in SCCA and in Trans Am racing for a number of years and was very, very successful with it. It was later sold to a couple of brothers, the Keller brothers, who raced it for a couple of years and then just put it away, and I bought it from them.
Okay.
And have since rebuilt the whole thing.
Now, did they have it stashed away in a barn?
Well, they had it in one of the garages, exactly. But I bought it with no engine. It was really a kit car when I bought it. A lot of pieces, none of them turned out to fit, and I wound up really building the car from scratch, other than the body.
Okay, now where were you able to get the parts for it?
Well, I've been into Volvos a long time, and my son, who lives up in Elk Rapids, has what's called the Volvo farm. He has 22 of them, and they're all older cars like this. And what I couldn't scavenge from him, there's a large aftermarket parts supply that you can pretty much get whatever you can afford.
Okay. For those of the people watching this program that might not know what campaign is, can you just briefly explain that?
Good question. Campaign meaning that he actively pursued championship status.
Okay, did he?
Yes, he was. I understand
did.
he was. I understand he. This is my understanding is that the car was a national champ in the '70s, national SCCA champ.
Okay, and has it always looked like this with
As
these
a matter of
colors?
fact, it has.
Yeah?
I've tried to maintain the main color scheme. It didn't always have the graphics on it, but it's always been the cream and blue with the gold trim. I put the flag cross on the roof, and put the lightning bolt on the side, but pretty much I kept it the same color.
Is it named Shazam?
Well, it could be named Shazam.
If we wanted to be,
If we
right?
want to call it Shazam, that's what we'll call it. It kind of reminded me of the old comic book with the lightning bolt, and it always says Shazam.
Right, and I'm sure as you're doing your racing, it looked the same. Well, regarding the racing, it's not on an oval track, I understand, or a straight track.
Correct.
Describe that track to us.
It's called road racing, and typically it's to simulate what you drive on a road with curves. You don't have stops, but you have sharp turns, you have uphill, downhill. Many times you're going around a water hazard in some cases and wind up in it sometimes, which I have done, depending on where the track is built. The tracks are generally built out in the middle of a field, and then they either conform to the topography of that field or they build them to a particular topography. But basically it's more of a handling exercise than a speed track.
Okay.
It's a combination of speed and handling, but speed alone will not win the race.
Well, do you even have a speedometer?
I do not have a speedometer. That's
Okay.
correct, because there's always someone faster.
Okay, so it's more the handling that's
Yes,
the race.
absolutely.
And is the surface dirt or pavement?
No, it's all paved. It's all
Okay.
paved. The track. Originally, they were dirt tracks, but as the field or as the hobby progressed, they went to a blacktop track. And
Okay.
in some cases, concrete.
Okay. Now you said that you raced prior to having this car, and then
Yes.
you went to vintage. What difference are you seeing?
Well, the difference is that you can bring this car to a track and not have to go home and look like you've been in a demolition derby. In the other racing, it's much more aggressive, and people are much rougher on other drivers. Here, there's a great deal more respect for the vehicle, and so no one wants to go home with a damaged vehicle. Further, if you have metal-to-metal contact that could have been avoided, they'll send you home they'll just take you
they'll
off the track.
eliminate you.
They'll take you off the track,
Right.
which
so,
I think is good.
can you drive this on the street?
I can, but it would be illegal. It's really not it's possible, but it's not a street car at all.
It's not.
There are too many modifications. It has dummy headlights. It does have brake lights, but there's too many modifications, and it's very, very hard riding on a street and very low slung. So it's really now been modified so that it's really a track car.
Okay. If you could think of one word to describe your interest in Volvos, what could you think of one word to describe yourself?
Well, they've always interested me. I started driving them I had a 444 back in 1960, and I've always liked them because they've really been able to combine practicality with kind of sport. Mm-hmm. They were a family car, and they do very well for a growing family, etc. And I've had about 9 of them over the years. When they went to fuel injection, I kind of bowed out because I understand the carburation better. But it was the fun of the car and the styling, which is a little funky, and the fact that you can still use it with a family.
Okay. And
Huge trunk.
When you're racing, okay, that's helpful. When you're racing, do you feel safe?
Oh,
Especially
very.
safe in this particular car?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have been in accidents in family cars that I've owned, and we totaled actually a 122 wagon, and all 4 of us walked out of there. The car was totaled, but to look at it, it looked very normal, but all the metal, all the force of the impact had just traveled throughout the body, and it was very, very safe. Yeah, I couldn't think of a car more secure than this.
Okay.
To be
So it's a good one to be in for racing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just interested in
Yes.
the inside. I mean, it looks simple, but it's probably not, right?
Well,
I'm not meaning
you're
to insult
right.
in any way. But when you look at new cars,
Yep.
you know, they look very complex, but this looks pretty straightforward.
First of all, there's
what
room.
you see, what you get.
Yes, it's what you see is what you get. You
There's
actually
room.
can see things that you're trying to get at. Now, you may not always get at them as easily as you can see them, but at least they're visible.
Right.
Whereas with the new cars, all you see is a big cover over everything. But
Right.
they're relatively easy to work on.
Okay.
I also have Jaguars, old Jaguars, and they're a little more complicated to work on and a little more full under the hood. These are a joy to work on because you can generally get your hands anywhere. Mm-hmm. And they are fun to work on, and they're relatively simple. The Volvo engine was basically a tractor engine to start with,
Okay.
but there's been a lot of ability to modify it because it's such a heavy duty internal, particularly the lower end is such a heavy duty construction, and they take a lot of beating.
Right. Okay, so are you having fun with Shazam?
Yeah, I have a great deal of fun with Shazam. Yes, I do.
Okay. Anything else that I didn't ask
Well,
that you'd like to
it's,
add?
it's just very nice to be here, and I think the starting of the club is a great idea.
I'm Angela Groom. I'm a sales consultant with Benton Imports in Grand Rapids, Michigan, specializing in Volvo sales.
Okay, and what did you bring to the show today?
What we have here today is the Volvo C70 retractable hardtop convertible. It's the first year in production. This is the first that we've received in our allocation of many to come. Beauty of this particular vehicle is that it is a retractable hardtop, so for season drivability. You can drive it in the wintertime. It's very quiet, very comfortable as far as temperature and climate control, but this time of year, very easy to bring the top down. Takes about 30 seconds to open the top and have it closed down, and you're ready to take off again.
Okay, we're at a Volvo show, and we have some people that have had Volvos for 40 years, and so this is quite contemporary, you know, if you compare. Are there still some of the, well, solid features that people have come to enjoy and appreciate in Volvos that are in this one as well?
Most definitely. Volvos, most people, first thing that comes to mind is the safety reputation of a Volvo. They've really, again, stuck with that tried and true procedure as far as incorporating airbag systems, anti-lock braking. From there, in a convertible, you're always concerned about rollover protection. They've reinforced the pillars in this aspect of the vehicle. There's also pop-up roll bars in the back that are specific to the Volvo. So all of those standard safety features are there that the current Volvo customers are familiar with, and then enhancing for 2006 what's the most current technology as well.
When customers come in and look at the C70, what are they looking for? What are you seeing in their desire to get a car like this?
Oftentimes what you're seeing, most people are familiar with a convertible being a two-seater. Again, coming back to the versatility of this car, this will actually seat 4 passengers very comfortably. Plenty of headroom in the vehicle. Again, looking for something, oftentimes you think of a convertible being just a seasonal, warm climate vehicle. With this having that hard top, you can drive it year-round. We're in West Michigan. We know we have severe winter weather. You can drive this, like I said, year-round. It's just very nice.
Do you think it will be kind of groundbreaking as far as not just the technology of the retractable roof, but the fact that it does seat 4 and it really incorporates a lot into one car?
Definitely is. There are other retractable hardtops on the market. Volvo has the very first 4-seat retractable hardtop convertible, so very first world-class vehicle. With a touch of one button, the top drops. So the roof shows it's open on the display. I can drop down my windows inside the vehicle, and I'm ready to go.
Gary Cooper, welcome to West Michigan and the Gilmore Car Museum
Thank
and
you.
the Volvo show.
Thank you. Beautiful
Very
spot.
happy to have you here. What brought you from Ontario to West Michigan?
Well, your husband, I think, sent some emails out, and I got the email and I saw where it was being held, and I thought, boy, that's a great spot to go for the first meet of the season. So that's how I ended up coming here.
And what car did you bring?
I brought a 1966 Volvo 122S. I purchased the car in North Carolina about 4 years ago. It was owned by one man from New, and he had driven it, and then his children had driven it, put both daughters to college, and it was just sitting under an outdoor roof, and he wanted to sell it, and it looked a little rough, but I thought, I think that car's got potential.
What condition was it in?
It was an original condition, never been painted, nothing's ever been done to it. There were minor rust spots on it. The interior was, because of the heat in North Carolina in the summer times, it was pretty well rotten. But the car was basically intact, the original engine, everything, it was original in it. So I thought it was really worthwhile keeping and saving.
So it's been restored, obviously. Do you do that yourself, or do you have someone do that for you?
I do all the mechanical work myself. I enjoy that tremendously, and now that I'm retired, I have even more time, which is a lot of fun. The body work, I don't attempt that. I had a friend do that, and very talented guy, and he convinced me to stay with the original color, which is a little different, but I'm glad I did.
Okay, well, different is one way of putting it. It certainly is unique and unusual, but it's beautiful, actually.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us about having it repainted?
Well, when I took it to the shop, I said to my friend, I said, we're going to have to change the color on this car, and he said, no, I think it should stay the way it is. And I said, oh, I don't know, trust me. He's an Italian, trust me.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you don't do. But I stayed with it, and I remember after he painted it, before the trim was on it, I looked at it, I thought, oh, I've made a terrible mistake. But it turned out to be, worked out very well. Once the trim was on, it looked much, much better.
You're pleased with it?
I'm very pleased.
Like, have you tried to maintain the integrity of the car and keep it as original as possible?
Actually, I could have kept it completely original because everything was with the car. But for instance, it came with very narrow tires, and they're a bias ply tire and they're rough on the road. And so I decided to change the tires, and in order to make it a little wider tire, I got a different rim, which fits the era of the car. I changed the engine. It's the same engine, but a little more powerful. It's a different transmission with an overdrive unit on it. So it made it much more comfortable to take in traffic today. Very, very easily driven at 70, 75 miles an hour. So
Do you get a lot of looks as you're driving down the highway?
A lot of this.
And do you go back
Yeah,
and-
maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so you drove it from where?
I live in Leamington, Ontario.
Okay, so how far was that for you?
It's about 3.5 hours altogether.
Okay.
Across at Detroit, and mainly freeway driving, which again the car is really well equipped for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go to what I understand several car shows a year. How would you rate these facilities for this car show?
Probably one of the nicest facilities that I've ever been to for a car show. There's other things to do other than just look at the cars. You can walk around, look at the exhibits, and talk to people who are doing different things with different cars, and it's been lots of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Okay, so what's your take on Volvo owners? They're a nice group.
Very nice group.
I like this group.
Very nice
Yeah,
group.
they're into their
Yeah,
cars.
they're very into their cars,
Right.
and they enjoy talking about them and driving them and fixing them. They're just really a good group of people.
Yeah.
I
Well,
had
let me
lots of
ask
fun.
you this. You saw the car, someone said, hey, you got to check this out. Was it because it was a Volvo or because it was an interesting car? It could have been anything, but it happened to be a Volvo.
No, I wanted a Volvo.
You did.
My friend knew that I was looking for one, and since he lived in North Carolina, they're relatively rust-free, so
Right.
that's why he called me.
Okay. Have you owned others?
Yes, I built a 240 V8, which I recently sold. I've had a P1800. I have a 1987 740 turbo that I used to drive daily. Yeah. And so I've had four Volvos.
Okay. So you're a tried and true
Tried and
Volvo
true Volvo
owner.
file, yes.
Well, this is clearly they're all unique here, that's for certain, but this is, definitely unique. And would you mind showing us the inside of your car?
No, be glad
Okay.
to. People say, oh my God, how could you have painted the car that color? I said, because it came that color.
It's supposed to be
It's
that
supposed
color.
to be that color. Oh God, I couldn't stand that. I said, well, it kind of grows on you after a while. I said, it stands out anyways. I mean,
Well-
no one never misses it.
Yeah. Anyway, when you're inside it, you don't see as much of it. But I don't know how do they reproduce this?
She doesn't
color?
like the color, did you?
No, I do. I do very much. This is definitely my color. Okay. Well, we're inside your 1966 122S Volvo, and boy, when we say basic, it's like, again, what you see is what you get. And just tell us a little bit about your instrument panel and the front here.
Well, this car, because it came from North Carolina, has a dealer-installed air conditioning unit, but it was hung below the dash. It never came with that, but the dealers were able to install it. One of the features of the Volvo is it has an unusual key in that it's very, very thin, and so when you go to start the car, the keys will frequently break. So I've added a push-button starter to try to avoid being stranded a couple of 100 miles from home with a broken key in my hand. It's very, very plain, very, very simple, very easy to work on, lots of fun to drive, amazingly modern for a 40-year-old car. And the only thing that I've really changed in it is to put a wooden steering wheel, and just much, much smaller than the original, because the original almost touches your legs when you're turning. But other than that, it's basically stock.
And how many miles does this one have on it?
This one has almost 215,000 miles.
Okay, and it's still going. And I didn't catch what engine is in this?
This has a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine with a 4-speed electric overdrive transmission.
Talking with Nora Akins. Welcome to the West Michigan Volvo Car
Thank
Show.
you.
Glad to have you here. And where did you drive up from today?
Michigan City, Indiana.
Okay. About how far was that for you?
About an hour and a half.
Okay.
Not
and
bad.
What did you come in?
We came in a 71 Volvo 1800E.
Okay. And have we seen this type of car somewhere before?
Maybe on television in the 60s or 70s, the Saint drove this car.
Right. So do you feel pretty sporty when you're driving it?
Sure.
Okay. So tell us how you came to get this.
My husband was looking on the internet for it. He used to have a 1800S in college, and he sold it to go down the Colorado River, and he's regretted it ever since. So he was looking on the internet and looked on it. I bet he looked on the internet for over a year. Went after a few cars, lost them for one reason or another. Then he found this one in Salem, Oregon, and flew out and had it shipped back.
Okay. Did he like what he saw when he went
I guess
out?
he did. I think he was
Yeah.
kind of desperate because he lost a few.
Oh, okay.
And so he felt like he had to jump on it while it was still available.
Okay. Are you enjoying it? Hope you're not disappointed in any way.
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay. So does he spend a lot of time working on it?
He does. He spends a lot of time still on the internet looking for parts and pieces. He still has a wish list that's a long wish list of things he still wants to do. He has most of the mechanical work done locally, but he does all the cosmetic work himself.
Okay. Did it need to be repainted?
No, this is the paint that we had. You know, that's what we bought it with, but he has done all the upholstery over. He took it all off and refinished it.
So do you use it, riding around town?
It's mostly a pleasure car.
Okay.
It has to be a nice, beautiful day like today, and then it goes out.
Okay. So is this your first experience with Volvos?
Yes,
Okay. What do you
Yeah.
think so far?
I love it. And Jack has a cross-country wagon too that we bought since this. And I'm a Saab person, and I
Okay.
actually like the Volvo better.
You do.
So I'm converting.
Okay. Well, you're among many, not really converts. There are people here that have been with it a long, long time, several decades. So, but it's good that that story worked out for you, finding it and bringing it back to the Midwest and enjoying it from the sounds of it.
Yeah, we've been having fun with it.
Okay.
My husband Jack took the seats out one winter, I think the first winter that we had it, and took all the upholstery off. He stripped the leather down to, I think it's bare leather through very soft chemistry, and redid it all. So it really, the color changed dramatically. It was really dirty before, and he actually hand stitched some of this stuff. So I found out he could be a seamstress if he wanted to be. And I guess I feel like I'm driving with Roger Moore. I think that's who it was, wasn't it? Roger Moore as a child. So it's a nice car. It drives really well. I do remember one of the mechanics saying that it just chews up bumps. So we always laugh about it chewing the bumps up, chewing the bumps on the road. So it's a smooth car, and it really hasn't needed too much, though Jack has invested a great deal in the mechanics of it and plans to continue to do so.
Standing with Steve and Joan Herzig from Highland Park, Chicago. Welcome to the West Michigan Volvo Car Show.
Thank you very much.
Very nice to have you here. And you have a real beauty here that you've brought, and you drove it here.
My
right?
wife, yes.
Your wife drove. Okay, Joan, what is the car that you brought with you?
A Volvo 544. That's about all I know about it. I know that
That's
much.
the extent of your knowledge of the car.
Right.
Well, what year is it?
64.
Okay,
Is it right?
1964.
Yeah, right. It's a 1964
Got all that right.
544 Volvo.
Is this the longest trip you've taken in this car?
No. No. Prior to our marriage, we took a very long trip
You're not supposed to say
to the
that.
we took a very long trip to the Outer Banks in North Carolina from Chicago and through Tennessee and the Smoky Mountains and all the way back home again
In this car.
in this car.
Okay,
Yeah.
how many miles does it have on it?
It has 101,000 miles on it.
Okay, and do you work on it yourself?
I have. It's a B18 engine. I have worked on it in the past. It has a Weber carburetor from IPD on it because the SU twin carbs that I had leaked frequently. I could never get them not to leak, and I was afraid that one day I would be on fire as I sat in the car. So we had that put on. The engine work in terms of painting the engine compartment, and the engine itself was done by Hubbard Wood Motors in Hubbard Woods, Illinois, by a guy by the name of Bob Berger. But it's a very simple, straightforward engine.
In its simplicity and straightforwardness, though, what performance does that give you when you're driving? And you know, it's been around 42 years.
Well,
long time.
it had a governor on it today. I couldn't go much past 60, but it is a car.
You were the governor.
She's
it
the
wasn't
governor.
A mechanical
Or governess.
It wasn't a mechanical governor.
But the this engine today, I think I could very adequately drive 70, 80 miles an hour from here back home without any problems whatsoever. I get about between 30 and 35 miles to a gallon on gasoline. I'm supposed to use premium, but I've stopped doing that. So in the future, I might have some problems with it. I don't know. The engine has never been touched in terms of an overhaul, and neither has the transmission. So I've been very fortunate in that regard.
How long have you had the car?
I bought the car in 1967, so I've owned it almost from the.
66, I thought.
Maybe it was 66. Yeah, a long time ago.
You've had it a long time.
Yeah.
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 There was one other owner.
There was one other owner. He lived in Lansing, Illinois, and apparently he, for some reason, didn't like the car. And I had been to the dealership, and I spoke with someone about buying a used Volvo, and about a month after I was in the dealership, the salesman called me and said this guy in Lansing had a car for sale, so I bought it from him privately.
At that time, when you were interested in it, were there many here? I mean, wasn't the first one in 1956 or so? Like, did you have much choice of a Volvo?
Well, there were, I really don't know, to be honest with you. I first saw a 544 in the state of Kentucky. I went to school with someone who owned one, and I loved the lines of the car. I liked the car very, very much. So I didn't look for any other models. I think the 122 was around at that point in time, the four-door sedan, and I think then in '67 they made the 122 also into a station wagon, or an estate wagon as they called it. But I really liked this car from the get-go.
Okay, so tell us about the color. Is that original?
The color is original. It's called blue-gray, but it is the original color paint that was on the vehicle
Has it been
when I
painted
purchased.
since?
It has been painted because at one point in time the car was totally inoperable. It just didn't run very well at all. And my father and I started on a rebuild project, and he died, and I took it out to some people in Fox Lake, Illinois, who painted it for me and did some of the body work as fill-in. So, but it's really, it's a wonderful car. Well, the seat belts are aircraft type seat belts, embedded into the body of the car. And I was told that the 544s also had roll bars built into the roof of the car, into the structure, which also impressed me at the time. I thought that was really a wonderful feature of this particular vehicle.
A lot of modern features that probably wouldn't show up,
Right.
so many years later.
Right.
Well, you must like something about it, because that's a long time for someone to own a car, considering people will turn them over, every couple of years or so now.
Well, we are a Volvo family. We have 4 Volvos. Joan drives an 85,
In 95.
a 95 850. We have an 88 turbo,
Okay.
which is really very nice. And we also have a 98 turbo wagon that has a manual shift in it, which is a very unusual vehicle. Other than I think it's a wonderful vehicle, and I wish Volvo would become retro and build something like it again, although it would never be as good, I'm sure. But it's a great vehicle.
Well, it looks like you've maintained it and taken good care of it and have enjoyed it for several decades.
With the support of Joe.
This is Michael Schultz from Maple City, Michigan, up near Traverse City. We want to welcome you to the West Michigan Volvo Car Show.
Thank you.
Yeah, did you drive your car down?
Absolutely.
All right, and what is this car?
This is a 123 GT Volvo 1967. There were 1,500 of these out of the 620,000 122 series cars. They chose to build 1,500 that were sort of geared towards rallying. And I just happened to come across this one probably before I even knew what it was and bought it. I had a 68, and that was probably in about 1980.
Okay, how'd you come across it?
I just found an ad in the paper and bought it. And then it basically sat untouched for about 18 years. And in 1997, I restored it pretty much to the condition you see it today for the tri-meet in Lake Placid, New York.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about that meet for those that might not be familiar with it.
That was a tri-meet of all three clubs, the Volvo Sport America, which VSA, this club, the VCOA, Volvo Club of America, and the Washington, there's a club in Washington, the capital.
Okay, so you got it up and running and started racing it?
No, I've never raced it.
No.
It's just we use it a lot to go to vintage racing events, and either as a pit crew or just as a spectator.
Okay.
And it's been all over the country.
Do you drive it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everywhere you go? So
Yeah.
how many miles does it have on it?
Well, since '97, about 50,000 miles. It just turned over 200,000 last week when we went down to Gingerman for racing.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks
and
ago.
is it the original engine? And
It is the original engine. It's been gone through once by myself and probably once before.
so it has a good 200,000 miles on it?
Oh yeah, sure.
There you go. What do you like about this car?
Well, it's fairly unique. It's inexpensive.
In what way?
Parts are relatively easy to come by and inexpensive compared to, say, a Jaguar, which I have one of, which will bankrupt you in a hurry.
Right.
And they're easy to work on. They run. This car is just a great car to drive. We've done some things to it. We've modified the suspension quite a bit, and it really holds the road and goes fast. And
So you drive on the highway and you're comfortable doing that?
oh yeah,
Yeah, drives fine.
yeah. We've driven to both coasts with it, and Virginia a couple of years ago to Virginia International Raceway, and there's a
Could
lot
you
of
see your-
stickers on it for all those places.
I see a lot of stickers. So would you ever race it, or that's not an intention of yours?
No, race cars quite different. You really have to build them up for racing. You know, you got the roll bar and all the safety features that you probably saw in Gary's car in a different interview. No, this is pretty much just a grand touring car, and we just have a lot of fun.
Okay, so how did you hear about the car show today?
Well, I'm a member of the VCOA, the national club, so they must have picked up my address or email from somewhere and just sent
Okay.
out a word of it.
And as a car show venue, what do you think of the Gilmore Car Museum?
The museum's great. I haven't even been in everything yet, and I've been here for 3 or 4 hours, and just some amazing examples of cars, and some of the paraphernalia that went with the cars, the hood ornaments and all that. It's great. As far as this meet, I mean, we have enough cars here. We could probably, for car, challenge some of the national meets that have occurred. So for a chapter meet, this is really getting a good start.
Yeah, for first time. I'm just curious, when you're driving down whatever highway, do people look and
all
kind
the
of
time.
double take?
All
What
the
kind of
time.
reactions do you get?
Lots of thumbs up. Women particularly seem to like this car. I don't know why, but
Right. the lines.
It does have some lines that resemble some other cars, and the twin grille of the 120 was really, you saw that in the Chrysler, like the 56 Chryslers and stuff, you saw the twin grille. But other than this and the Chryslers, that was probably the only time it was ever used, so that's sort of unique. Yeah, so.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about it?
Well, this was the first car that Volvo introduced the alternator in. For instance, you know, it's got this little sticker on the inside the bonnet that says, you know, this is AC car, don't do this or that, and that was really brand new to this car. Even though there were 120s being built of the same body, this was the car they decided to introduce that into.
Right.
So.
And one recurring theme is that these cars were very modern for their time when they were built. And are there some other examples of that you have seen?
Well, they were modern and they were safe. Volvo introduced the 3-point harness, of course, which you probably have heard in other interviews. And they're just tough as nails. I mean, this car, even though it doesn't have all the airbags and stuff like, say, a new V50, you know, I would say that I'm in pretty good shape if I were in an accident in this car compared to even some of the modern stuff we're driving. So, so for 1967, or even as early as 1962, Volvo had a real edge on the safety issue, and probably that's why Ford wanted to pick Volvo up, at least Volvo cars, is to incorporate some of that safety into their product line.
So if you could think of one word to describe your interest or anything at all about Volvos, could you think of that one word?
I guess it would have to be reliability or safety. I mean, two words really surmounts the Volvo. I mean, we have a new V50 Volvo that we just absolutely love. It's about the same size as this. You put them side by side, they're the same length, they're the same size. You sit next to each other about the same. And just a totally safe, great car in the winter. And we just love it. And I've got a couple other Volvo projects in the works that are coming along slowly, but will be a good interest.
Maybe another time, another occasion, we'll hear more about those.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well thanks for coming to the car show.
You too. Great, thank you.
Enjoy your day. I'm here with Dave Wright on what he calls his trike, and this is quite an interesting machine. Dave, when you take this as a whole, you look at it, it looks like one piece of machinery here. Take it piece by piece, part by part. It's quite an interesting story. How did this come about?
Well, a friend of mine and I, out of high school, were interested in motorcycles. And we saw a picture of a trike in a magazine, and we thought, hey, we can make something like that. So we took the engine and we just wrapped some metal around it, really wrapped the pipe around it with a pipe bender. Engine's out of a 63 P1800. Master cylinders are off a 122 brake and clutch. And the front end is off a Harley Davidson. And there's a 122 radiator in the back. And it has a Jaguar XKE rear suspension in it. Originally had a 544 rear suspension in it, which rode very rough. So we put found the XKE and put that in there.
Does that ride a little better?
Yes, rides a lot better with the independent rear suspension, and it drives very nicely. I have put 500 miles a day on it, which is too much, but I've done it before.
So how many miles does it have on it now?
I guess around 150,000.
And where'd that engine come from?
It's out of a 63 P1800.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone you know? From anyone you know?
Yeah, from my sister. My sister bought the car back in '67. And she drove the car for probably 5 years, and it rusted out, and she gave it to me. And
so she gave you the go-ahead to use the engine?
Yeah, she gave me the whole car. And
okay.
Yeah.
There are some other parts from Volvos on here. The gear shift, is that?
Yeah, the gear shift. It's just the old Swan Neck style shifter, and it's turned halfway around and shortened up.
Okay, and there's a piece back here behind your seat that was part of a transmission. Is that correct?
Oh, on a 700 alternator mount. It was adjustable, so I just fabricated it back here so I can adjust my seat.
Okay, you can move it back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Tell us what What happens when you drive this out on the road? What kind of reaction do you get?
Oh, people just love it, love the look of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially the kids, little kids love it.
Would
Well,
you,
people of all ages love it, really.
you enjoying it?
Yeah, I really look forward to it on the weekends, letting some steam off, just getting out there and going down the road, you know. I've been out west with it a couple times, been out to Arizona. I've been up to the Straits. I lost track how many times, maybe 20 times. Been around Lake Michigan 2 or 3 times, been around Lake Huron. Yeah, done a lot of traveling with it.
Well, we're glad you were able to make it to the Gilmore Car Museum
Thank
today.
you.
We've met up with Bill Gonzo here at the Gilmore Car Museum, and he has driven here from Niagara Falls, Canada. Welcome to the car show.
And I'm glad that you guys put the car show on so that more people can actually see. This venue is absolutely gorgeous. I think it is absolutely. Anybody who doesn't come to the show that sees this video should come to the show, because the Gilmore Museum here is one of the most absolutely wonderful museums I've ever seen. I've seen not a brand new, it was close to brand new, Tucker, with probably less than 50 miles on it, the fellow told me. So anybody knows their cars understands that that is a car that's really worth coming to see.
So really, it's not just a circle of Volvos in this grassy area. We're part of history here, and we're really part of something larger, people coming together. You've been involved with Volvos for about 13 years. I'm sure you've come across some interesting people. Any that you'd care to share with us?
Actually, yes, there was actually a couple I'd like to talk to. One would be Lucy McLennan. She was a lady that I met through our Volvo Club. I was doing the newsletter, and for about 10 years she had been a member of the newsletter, a member of the club, sent in her money religiously, and finally, eventually, I kind of asked the guys, I says, who is this lady? Nobody's ever seen her. He said, oh, she's been in the club 10 years. I says, well, has anybody ever met her? And they said, well, no, not really. Nobody knew anything about her other than she sent her money in religiously every year. So I contacted Lucy, and then I phoned her up. She lives in Toronto, and at that time she was 74 years old. Mm-hmm. So at 74 years old, here's a lady that owns an 1800 exactly like mine, an ES, still drives it every day as her everyday car. And I contacted some of the guys down in the States, and they said at that time she was one of the oldest Volvo people that they had ever seen. So at that time we had done a meet. We were doing a get-together up in Peterborough. We were going to tour around. A bunch of people showed up. And in fact, a lot of people showed up just to see Lucy because no one had ever met her before. So here comes this little gold ES comes driving in. Lucy's sitting in. She's sitting on a cushion because she wasn't tall enough to actually look over the steering wheel. I've got pictures of her where she can barely look over top the window to kind of see where she's driving, which was very funny. So as soon as she drove in, I knew right away, this is Lucy. I went over to talk to her. I said, Lucy, how you doing? It's got to be you. She sat down with us. She was the funniest lady. She had been around, like I've got a video clip of her. I went to her house because I figured she's not going to be around too much longer, and I said I wanted to get her story. Unbelievable story, the history that she's been through. She took delivery of her car brand new over in Volvo in Sweden. She went over to Sweden, took delivery of her car brand new, toured all around Europe all by herself. Containered the car, brought it back over to Nova Scotia, picked it up in Nova Scotia, and drove the car back home after that. Absolutely unbelievable for a woman in that time back in 1972 to actually have done that.
Real pioneer.
And I said, wow, for a woman to actually have done that, the original owner, original person, picked it up at the factory and go for a drive, fantastic. I just couldn't believe it. So I've got this on tape, and someday I hope to do something with it in her memory, because I know at that time she was having health problems, and that was probably 5-6 years ago that I talked to her. So I'm just imagining she's not around anymore. So
do you know where the car is?
I have no idea. Her son was going to take care of it. They asked me at one time if I could help them sell it. I gave them a few directions on where to go. What happened to it, I have no idea. I hope it's gone to a good home, and I hope that people understand the story behind Lucy, which is real
quite
interesting.
A lot of history.
And then there's also other real interesting people, and we were talking earlier, and I'd just like to go over that with you also, is Herb Gordon, which is basically the highest mileage car by a private person that's in existence in the world.
Yep.
at 2-point-some million miles. Now, we've met Irv probably 4 or 5 times now, and he is just absolutely the most genuine, interesting car person you would ever want to meet in your life. He has stories like I've never heard. His car's been taken over to Europe. He's been in Europe. There's a fellow mechanic over there that works on the cars that worked on his car. And actually, he is the same fellow that put together ST1, which is the Saint car. That's actually in the States right now. That actually just got restored. He was the fellow that put the car together for him. And that was another fellow that Irv was over. And now Irv's got stories like you would not believe. We just laugh every time we see him. He's such an interesting guy. So hopefully someday you guys are going to get to meet Irv, and real interesting.
Yeah, we'll meet up with Irv later in the program.
That'd be good.
Okay, well, we cannot help but notice your car next to you.
Yes.
It's a very bright
very
yellow.
bright.
What's the name of this yellow?
Called
Does it have a name?
Real Yellow. No, what it is,
Really yellow.
I wanted something very bright, so when I talked to my body man, I says, I want bright. I said, Frank, you know what I'm looking for. So what this is yellows are made from what they call base yellows.
Right.
Then all yellows are a derivative from them. This is base yellow, the brightest yellow that you can get.
Okay.
So this is a DuPont Imron paint. I wanted something a little more durable because of the mileage that I do put on the car. I drive it a lot, and I'm looking for something that'll be a little less resistant to scratching and chipping and what have you. Now this paint job's got to be now close 7, 8, 9 years or whatever.
It looks like it's holding up very well.
It's holding up very
chips
well.
and
Yeah, it's holding up
things.
well. And I couldn't even tell you how many miles I put on it.
No idea.
I have no
Take
idea.
A guess.
Since
Just a wild guess.
Probably 40,000 miles.
What's the car
30.
have on it altogether?
That's interesting. When I got the car, the speedometer was broke at 275,000 miles.
No way.
Yeah.
So
it's over 300,000 miles right now.
And the original engine?
Well, it's been rebuilt. Everything's been rebuilt. There was nothing left. Actually, this car, if I wouldn't have restored this car would probably be in the junkyard today.
Would it?
It was absolutely, well,
You saved it from that
let's put it
fate?
this way. You know Freddie Flintstone when he puts his feet through the floors?
Yeah.
That's basically what I had to work with when I
Right.
started. We went and lifted the carpets up, and when we lifted the carpets up to see how the floor was, well, the floor was sticking to the bottom of the carpet. that was the floor. So there was a lot of work. I mean, there was nothing left of the car, absolutely nothing.
Well, I just would like to say it's been a pleasure to have you at the show. You've brightened it up, and really it's nice to have someone so experienced. And Volvos at the Gilmore is a fond memory now, but we're back at the Gilmore Car Museum to meet a very interesting man named Irv Gordon. Who is Irv Gordon? If you haven't heard of him, you'll be a very extraordinary man who has put millions of miles on his Volvo 1800. This weekend he was at the Vicksburg Car Museum just a few miles from here and agreed to come to the Gilmore Car Museum to talk to us about the millions of miles that he's put on his Volvo 1800. Let's meet Irv Gordon, a very special man with quite a story to tell. We have the pleasure of returning to Hickory Corners, Michigan at the Gilmore Car Museum to talk to Irv Gordon. Irv Gordon drives a 1800 Volvo, got lots of miles on it, which we'll talk about in a moment. And it's a beautiful sunny day for him to show us his car and some really interesting things about his experience with his Volvo 1800. So welcome. Thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule, your driving schedule, to come to this beautiful part of Michigan to show us your car and to meet you and get to know you a little bit better.
Well, thanks for the invitation. This is terrific.
Okay. Well, I've been reading a little bit about you, but perhaps a lot of the people watching this program might not know your story, which is a very interesting one. But first I'd like to know how, of all the cars you could have gotten in 1966, right? How did you come across this car?
Actually, I was forced into buying this car.
Forced?
Used
A little arm twisting?
Used to be a General Motors man, you know, but my last 2 Chevrolets were both lemons, and General Motors didn't stand behind either one of them, and I promised them I would never buy another one, unfortunately, and I still like them. But anyhow, a friend of mine took me down to take a look at one of these. It was actually an air-conditioned convertible.
Really?
And, yeah, that the dealer used to cut the tops off and make convertibles out of them. And I took one for a test ride. We were out for 3 hours. I wouldn't have come back, but I was almost out of gas. And I decided to buy it.
Okay, so how did it get converted to a hardtop?
Well, I couldn't afford the air-conditioned convertible,
So this one was sitting in the showroom.
Okay.
And went on a Wednesday night and bought the car, and Friday I came by to pick it up and put 1,500 miles on it that weekend, never left Long Island.
You got the Royal Tour of Long Island.
Oh,
in
I
your
went
new
everywhere.
car.
I just couldn't get out of the car. It was great.
You've put a lot of miles on it, and I was intrigued by the fact that you were a Long Island commuter. You commuted from Manhattan to Long Island.
Well, I commuted in that time from eastern Long Island and plain town called Patchogue, where I am, almost into the city every day to a town called Roslyn. So I was going the other way, along with everybody else. And the Long Island Expressway is the world's longest parking lot, as most people know it.
I've heard it called that.
Yes. So
right.
every day, 35 years of that.
What was your daily commute?
About 125 miles round trip.
Round trip.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're putting all these miles on, and you eventually let Volvo know that you'd
Yes, I did.
reached 50,000 or
500,000.
500,000, and
That's just one more zero.
right, one more, and just tell us what their response was.
Well, I wrote them a letter and told them how happy I was with the product and what a wonderful car it was, and that the car required no repairs of any kind, just normal maintenance type things. And I got a letter back from them and said, "We're happy you're happy with the product. Don't forget to buckle up and have a nice day."
It was really
a
that
very
concise,
short little
yeah.
paragraph, about that big. I wrote them again when I was I had almost 1 million miles on the car, and they wrote me back another letter. "We're happy you're happy with the product. Don't forget to buckle up and have a nice day."
Okay, now was this to say that they were accustomed to getting letters from
Well,
people
that's what I
saying
thought. I
that?
figured,
Right.
well, no wonder I'm happy with the product. Everybody else is. I had never heard of a Volvo before.
Right.
Didn't know anything about Volvos. Had never seen one before. And this was a whole new experience for
They
me.
had stacks of these letters
So I
coming
figured they
in.
must get them all day long. No wonder. And of course, I didn't expect to hear from them, and it took them another year to get around to. They started calling my dealer to see if the car was still on the road, if they had seen the car, what kind of shape was it in, what kind of mileage did they have in my records, and so on, because I still have the car, still today, serviced at the same dealer I bought the car from.
The same dealer.
Yeah.
Are any of the same mechanics or employees?
The one
around?
mechanic who works on my car has been there for, he's the second fellow to work on the car. The other fellow is long retired.
So he knows it well.
So, yeah.
So how many miles do you think were on it when they really finally took notice and, said, wait?
I probably
something's
had around
different?
900,000 on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think once they called me, I had 750 on the car, and they wanted it for an advertisement. The owner of the dealership called me and said, "Would you like to be in an ad for Volvo?" And it was one of 12 pictures about this big and very,
Right.
very dark picture. And
Well, still, everyone has to have their start
Nobody knew
somewhere.
it was me.
Well, you did, I'm sure. So that's really been the start of a unique and interesting relationship with Volvo.
It's been terrific. They're like a second family to me.
Yeah, what else do you do for them, with them, throughout the year?
Well, they invite me to go to some dealer openings and things like that, dealer celebrations, and then Volvo has their own celebrations from time to time. And once in a while, they're kind enough to do that. And they sent me to Europe a couple of times, one for a car show in England, and then when the Volvo had its 75th anniversary, they shipped the car again, and
Okay.
I got to drive around Europe and see the countryside.
Yeah, so it's as I said, it seems like a really good relationship
Oh,
that
it's
you've
terrific.
established with them. You are, besides the comfort of it, it's maintaining itself in a way, sort of. You're not like constantly.
It seems the more you
fixing
drive
it.
it, the happier it is.
Right.
Yeah, and the less work it needs. I just do normal maintenance, Put a set of air filters on once in a while, points and plugs, change the oil.
I'm sure that people first hearing about this might find it hard to believe. Maybe say, "Oh yeah, right, just a little oil here and there." But really, is it that straightforward that it's well maintained and well
Absolutely.
driven as well?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Car
you're
only
not
loves
hard
you if
on
you
it
love
all.
it.
Right. You've had an experience since you've owned it. You've put a lot of miles on it, but you've been to a lot of places.
Oh, the Volvo was my ticket to going places. Without this car, who would? You buy a car, you have no idea what the decision today is going to do for you tomorrow, for the rest of your life.
Right.
And after buying this car, it's been the best investment I ever made.
Right.
It's taken me places I wouldn't normally get to go. I've met people I wouldn't normally get to meet, yourself. Okay? They're just situations that I get into that the average person wouldn't have any concept, or wouldn't have any opportunity to get involved with, and it's been terrific.
It sounds like it. And are there some highlights from those places or those people? A
Oh,
lot of
my
people
goodness.
don't get to small town America too much anymore, just the way our highways are and malls and things like that. But, just can you pull out a highlight from that experience that you've had?
I've had the opportunity to go to some really nice small town USA. One of the things I like to do is just stop for a cup of coffee when I go into a town and just sit down at a stool, counter, and just kind of listen to the conversations to see what's going on in the town and see what's different in this town than the other town that I was just in.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You get to, you know, if you park a car like this outside, most people outside of the big cities haven't seen one of these. So it's a whole new deal to them. So you pull up out front and suddenly everybody's curious about the car, and it's a great icebreaker, you know.
Do you like that attention that the car draws?
Well, it's nice that anybody's interested in an old car. I'm sure it'd be the same thing if I pulled up in an old Model T or a Packard or something to that effect, you know. It's
Yeah.
something out of the ordinary.
Right.
And cars like this are, you know, just don't see them out in the desert. You know, these small towns on Route 66 and so on, that you just don't see.
Speaking of the desert, I saw you driving on Daytona Beach.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't let anyone in your car,
Right.
well, not many people, no one can eat in it, how is it that you drive on the beach?
I drive this car on anything. And this car goes in ice, snow, sleet, hail. It's been in hurricanes. It's been in floods. I mean, actually not underwater,
Yeah,
but I mean, it's
near.
been in heavy water and so on. And I mean, every time I go to Daytona since I first got the car, when I used to take the kids down to visit their grandmother and so on in Miami, I mean, we always took a day and drove down to Daytona, parked the car on the beach, spread out the blanket, and spent the day at the beach there.
Okay.
And I mean, it's just one of those things you have to do. You're in Daytona. Take a
You
ride on
gotta
the beach.
drive on the beach. So you're protective and you have your rules, but you also like to have your fun
Oh,
and
sure.
enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a car that gets driven every day. I mean, I wash underneath. You can't just wash the outside. You got to
Yeah.
wash all the sand off, but you know.
Right, rinse it off. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of people would wonder if they got a new car or whatever car and if they could do what you've done in yours. But probably there are some differences now with them. What do you
Well,
think?
I just sold one of my Volvos to a friend in Holland who's coming to visit me in another 2 weeks. I had a 780, an 87 780, and I put almost 500,000 miles on that car.
Uh-huh.
And I had the same experience with that car as I did with this. I put $1 million on this one in the same period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And all I did was change the oil. That car required no repairs.
Just changing the oil.
Just mufflers and brakes and, you know, normal things that wear out, you know, nothing
Normal
out of the
things.
ordinary.
I'm thinking that it seems like there is more to it, but it's not sounding like it really. It's just being careful and you know.
You know, anybody can tear something apart in a
Yeah.
hurry, you know? I mean,
Right.
it's just an attitude problem that some people have, you know? That's a car, I'll just beat it up, and when it dies, I'll get a new one.
They're disposable, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way some people feel, and then of course they always blame the car,
Right.
you know? My idea is, you know, drive the car and enjoy the car, let it do what it's supposed to do, but take care of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you really have to take care of it. It's just a matter of common sense. I mean, it's like not changing the oil is like sitting in a tub of old bath water, you know?
Yep.
I mean, how would you like to get up and have a ring around you when you get out of the tub?
You gotta
So, I
change
mean,
it.
it's the same idea.
Okay, so the engine has been redone.
I had the engine rebuilt at 680,000 miles back in 1978 because I thought I was pushing my luck. Because I had
Right.
never heard of an engine that could do that.
Okay.
And the dealer told me to leave it alone, everything was fine. And I said, no, I have to travel a long way every day. I know that one of these days I'll be driving along and pistons will come flying through the hood. And he said, there's nothing wrong. I said, then save the old parts for me, rebuild it anyway. So I was going to be away for 2 weeks. And when I came back, everything was done. And I learned my lesson, and I haven't touched the engine since. It
Not
hasn't been
since
off.
then. I'm sorry, when was that again?
That was 1978.
Okay, so it's not been retouched
No,
or
it's
touched
got over
since
a
then.
million miles on it since then. So
Okay, and any other things that, you know, someone would want to know about, you know, parts being replaced, and do you use anything other than Volvo parts?
everything I have comes over the counter from Volvo.
Over the counter,
Yep.
so it's not like you have specialty parts on it.
No, everything is just the way I bought the car, and I figured I bought a Volvo, I'd like to keep it a Volvo.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than some of these aftermarket things, you know, I know that the Volvo parts last a very long time, and they have a great warranty. So,
So
you know,
you
it
use
may
Volvo.
cost me a little bit more, but you know, everything fits right the first time.
What does your mechanic say about your engine now? Just don't touch it? Doing okay?
He loves it.
All
He loves it.
right.
He enjoys working on it. You know,
I
anytime
bet.
I call, just come on down. You
Yeah.
know, we'll take care of it right away. I mean, it's
Right.
nice that you know I don't have to make an appointment 2 weeks in advance anymore. And if I have to order a part, a new gasket or a seal or something, I don't have to go down and leave a deposit anymore. They know who I
They
am.
know you.
So,
They know
yeah,
where to find you,
that's
right?
So they know I'm good for it.
You
You know.
can't get very far
Yeah,
without
yeah.
them. What about the upholstery on it? Have you had to do much with that?
All the upholstery is original except for the 2 front seats.
Just the 2 front
Yeah,
seats.
because again, I don't have a garage. My car's outside all the time. The sun comes through that window and it gets awfully hot in there. The leather dries out. And I've had the 2 front seats recovered twice.
Twice. And what about the sun on the paint? Is it affected by that?
Well, red is very hard to maintain. The car's been painted about 4 times a piece at a time. The acid rain and the sun. I live half a block from the ocean. Salt air on it all the time. The birds like it so much they leave a deposit all over it all the time. So,
Okay, so it has been well painted, right?
So it has to, yeah, every once in a while. I mean, if I'm going to keep it presentable.
Right,
You know?
and it is beautiful. It is very presentable. Always the same color?
Color code 46, just the way it came.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always the
Keep
same.
it all original. And the stone bruises from being on the highway, you know, you have to have those repainted every once in a while.
Right.
Replace the windshields every 2 years.
Okay, yeah, from the chips and...
From the stone bruises, yeah,
Okay.
chips.
Okay, do you have anything special planned for when you reach 2.5 million miles?
That's a very good question. I have notified Volvo that I'm very, very close to it. Another month or so.
Wow.
And it's also going to be a period of time when the car turns 4 million kilometers, which the rest of the world operates on in millions of kilometers. So, or kilometers anyhow. And it's also its 40th anniversary. So 4 million kilometers, 40th birthday. Even though the birthday is June 30th, it's going to be a little bit past that, but sometimes I have to sleep and get some rest, you know, so on. There's other things to do besides drive all the time. So I'm going to be a little late, maybe August.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that Volvo will throw a little party for it.
There you
I mean,
go.
always enjoy going to a party.
Yeah.
So twice now they've had a party, one in Times Square, when I turned to 2 million. And when I turned to 1 million, it was at Tavern on the Green in Central Park in New York City.
Yep.
Both were wonderful affairs. Had a wonderful time. And all my favorite people were
That
there.
must have been very exciting.
Well, it's
You know,
always
the
nice to be
anticipation
king of the
and-
day.
Yeah,
You know?
right. Who wouldn't want to be? But for such a fun and, I don't know, it's just a special thing.
Again, you know, you buy a car, you really have no idea that a car is ever going to do this to your life, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, it's quite an honor. I mean, I'm tickled pink with the car. Obviously, I've got my money's worth. 4 more payments and it's mine.
You've definitely gotten your money's worth for it. So what lies ahead? It sees winter, it sees all year. It's not like you pack it away
No.
for the winter, right?
3 million miles.
3 million. You're shooting for 3.
Another 5 years.
Okay. And then what? Or
And
is
then,
that too far ahead?
and then
to
I'll be
think?
older than dirt.
So do you go to many Volvo car shows?
Well, you know, I'm a member of Volvo Club of America, and I try to make it to as many different club meets, Canada, all over the United States. Even been to Europe, a couple of the shows in Europe.
Okay.
On my own. You know, had nothing to do with Volvo, didn't bring my car. And also been to Australia for the club meets.
Okay.
And it's been a great experience. Again, great opportunity to meet people. Always nice to see everybody else's toys, you know. And there are some very talented people out there that have done wonderful things with Volvos.
They are a very nice group of people. What are some of those wonderful things that you're seeing when you go to the car shows?
Oh, just a variety of things that weren't available here in the U.S., whether it be an accessory or a different kind of an engine, high compression race engines and so on. I mean, things that normally you would have no idea that such things are available. And when you go to Sweden, you see things that just boggle your imagination. So what they do to their Volvos over there is what we do to Chevys and Fords over here, you know, between funny cars and race cars and fuelies and so on. They do over
That's
there
where
with
they're
Volvos.
doing it. Right. So are the parts interchangeable on the Volvos?
Well, the
All
nice thing
classics?
about the Volvos is Volvo's built certain engines that are like generations apart, but many of the parts from one engine will fit another engine, water pumps, pistons, things like that. And you can take the head off an older Volvo and put it on a newer Volvo, and maybe not the most modern ones, but early 1800s, late 1800s, 122s, 544s, and so on. There are a lot of interchangeable drivetrain parts, which make life very easy to keep the cars on the road. But then again, Volvo still reproduces and still has in stock many parts from the cars all the way back to the 50s.
Okay.
And there seems to be a resurgence in restoring the older Volvos. So Volvo's warehouse in Sweden has complete upholstery kits, headliners, door panels, kick panels. I mean, all the things that normally wear out from 20 years of driving the car and having the kids in the car and standing on the seats and so on, and you eventually want to replace them. those things normally wouldn't be available. Try to do that with your Chevy, you know?
Okay. And where can people get those in case they're not sure?
Well, you can go right on online. On www.gcp.se. GCP is the warehouse that has the parts for all the cars that Volvo no longer actually is in the process of manufacturing.
Okay, that's good to know for getting those different parts.
Yeah, and you can go right online and you can go through their catalog, pick out the part you want, type in your credit card, and they'll ship it to you if you can't get it anywhere else.
Okay, that's good to know. When you go to the car shows, over there you mentioned they have done all sorts of things to them. Over here, what's of interest to you when you go, besides the people, which are, you know,
Well, I
nice
really like to meet the people. I mean, I like to see everybody's cars and how they take care of them, and those people who drive them as opposed. There are even people around here who, you know, just trailer their car from show to show. They're so proud of it, and you know, they're afraid to get it dirty or rusty or whatever else. I mean, maybe they feel it's going to fall apart, but it looks good.
Right.
So I mean, there are people like that no matter where you go.
It
But
takes all kinds.
my philosophy is you might as well have a stamp collection. You know,
If you're
you
just
open
going
up
to
the
look
book,
at it.
look at my pretty stamps, close the book, put it back on the shelf, look at it again 2 years later.
There you go.
I would much rather enjoy the car every day.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been such a pleasure talking to you and
Well, thanks, Joyce.
sharing your story with other Volvo enthusiasts and just car enthusiasts.
Well, thanks for your interest. I mean, this is terrific. I just enjoy, you know, being out in the fresh air and the open road, straw beats hanging around the house, watching TV or the grass grow, or going down to watch the Sears truck unload for excitement. You know?
Oh, that's true. I'm sure it's much more interesting than that.
Even Hickory
Silly.
Corners is terrific.
Right.
And the
Believe it or
museum
not.
is terrific. You'll notice, clean hands.
Yeah.
So you can check your oil. Notice that's full. Notice how nice and clean it is.
I was going to say,
Even smells good.
you can read the minimum mark through it, then it must be pretty clean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know.
Must be pretty clean. Oh, that's real clean.
And I mean, that's 1,000 miles since I left home. You notice it hasn't gone down a little bit.
Yep.
Still full. And a little holder there for your dipstick rag.
It's been a great day here at the Gilmore Car Museum, and now we're with Tim Cox and David Irvin, co-organizers of this event. First-time event. How did you two come together to plan this? Tim?
eBay, right.
How
I was
did
selling.
eBay bring you together?
I was selling, and David tried to buy.
And I lost.
Okay.
And we have
And
virtually identical cars. They're 8 serial numbers apart, made the same week in November of 1972.
And which car is that? What is the model?
It's the Volvo 1800 ES.
So an 1800 ES brought you together, and how did this event come out of buying parts from one another?
My memory is that we got together and shared stories and looked at each other's cars and said, you know, in the spring we probably ought to get together with a few friends and take a drive. And it's evolved into what we have today.
How many cars did you have register?
Well, we didn't take a formal count, but as close as we can guess, it's between 45 and 50.
Okay, so pretty good numbers for a first-time event.
Wonderful numbers.
Yeah, and what are you finding? Is there an interest in this, you know, in establishing a chapter and, you know, getting some things going in West Michigan?
We have found a hole in the center of the country. The East Coast has things, the West Coast has things, and they're saying that this is as good as some of the national events that they have, and we're really tickled about it.
We're very pleased.
Yeah, well, it was well organized, and you really brought a good, solid group of Volvo fans together for this event. I want to turn behind us to your cars. Lined up side by side, it's wonderful to see. They look almost identical. Are there any differences at all between these two cars?
Mine's an automatic, and he has a 4-speed overdrive.
And other than that, about the only thing I can think is miles driven. But with a Volvo, you know, that's not much of an issue.
It's not.
I have 217,000, and you have
44,000.
Just 44,000.
Just 44,000.
And his is nicer.
David's got an interesting story. I'm sure you do too, Tim, as well as getting your car. But can you briefly tell us how you acquired yours?
My sister's brother-in-law bought it new in 1973 in Brooklyn at Helms Volvo. A year later, he gave it to his brother, who and my sister basically used it for 33 years. And when they were ready to get rid of it, they said, we would like to keep it in the family, so it pays to be nice to your sister.
Right, be nice to your sister. And you've really taken off with your interest in your Volvo.
I've really researched it a lot over the past 7-8 months, found a lot of parts, made some nice friends, and
there are several other 1800S's here at the show. This is an ES. Any history you can tell us? How many did they make? Anything about that?
During the last 2 years of the production of the 1800, Volvo tried to update and refresh the lines a little bit and added this model, which has a hatchback. There were 8,096, I believe, produced. There is some people who have a little different opinion, but it's very close to that number if that's not correct.
Okay, and how many do you think are on the road or somewhere in existence today?
You know, I'm guessing not many more than 1,000, but there's been some online forum talk about that, but I don't think anybody has a real number, but 1,000's a pretty good guess.
Okay, well, we're glad that you two met up on eBay regarding parts and that you've been able to bring these Volvo owners together today, and good luck to you. What we've experienced at the first Volvos at the Gilmore Car Show was quite a spectacular event. Volvo owners came from Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Canada. They shared stories, they got to know each other, friendships were made, stories told about classic and contemporary Volvos. It's been a wonderful day at this classic car museum, and we hope you'll join us again for the next Volvos at the Gilmore. What started out among strangers buying parts from one another that became a friendship has turned out to be a very spectacular event enjoyed by many, many people. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joyce Irvin.